Okay, welcome. My name is Jose Ricardo Fuentes, and I've been really a student of Ken Wilber since probably 89, 90. And what we are going to do here is we're going to have an introduction of basically the whole theory, and I'm going to go through one part of the theory that stages very quickly, because this afternoon we have a deep dive into stages with David. And so we're going to look at the other part of the theory a little bit more. And the idea of what we're doing is basically that. We always do the introduction, and every 3 or 4 months we do a deep dive into one aspect of the theory. What I found is that sometimes here in the introduction, we think we know the theory, but every time I present it, I understand more and more what really this is, and how profound is the implication of what Ken has done and what the integral movement has started to make happen in the world. Okay. So let's start with Ken Wilber. And let's talk a little bit about Ken Wilber. There are many other people that are now practicing and talking about integral theory. And many people may say that there are other authors and other philosophers that started integral theory. For one, Aurobindo might be considered also, since he was one of the first that talked about integral when he talked about integral yoga. But in my studies, and I know maybe coinciding with many others, Ken can be called the father of integral theory very easily. So who's Ken? Ken, let's talk about different aspects. As a mystic, Ken is really a mystic. He is primarily a Buddhist, but he knows and practices most of the traditions, we'll say all the traditions. He has access to non-dual, and we're going to talk about that state. What Ken is really a true practitioner as a mystic. Many hours of meditation, and he can access the state of non-duality, coming from that state of being one with everything. And he can live in permanent witness. As a matter of fact, there's stories that he said that it was a long period of time and he didn't even sleep because he was all the time in the witness. As a scientist, he has the credentials of a master of biochemistry. A master because he stopped short of his PhD, only in he didn't do the dissertation because he didn't consider that that was going to help him, and he took the time of the dissertation to write at 23 years old his first book, which is The Spectrum of Consciousness, which, by the way, is still in print and is a great bestseller, great introduction to this theory. And he really stresses the 3 strands of valid knowledge, and he has applied this theory to all kinds of endeavors, including what we call non-scientific, which is the spiritual world, and we'll talk about that. As a psychologist, he is regarded as the pioneer of transpersonal psychology, and he has developed a new comprehensive view of psychology. In the book Integral Psychology, Ken compares more than 85 different models, and he shows how these models interact with each other. It's a great accomplishment. I mean, no one else has ever really has that breadth, especially in psychology. And as a philosopher, as a result of all the studies, he has really developed his own philosophy, and they had made a lot of contributions to philosophy, to the deep science of philosophy. And his theory of philosophy is called aquality. That's what we're going to talk about today. It's all quadrants, all levels, all lines, all types. What is the integral vision? Integral vision is a synthesis of multiple perspectives for understanding human development, culture, and physical and global systems. In other words, to understand everything. Ken, when he started in this need, and he said, what I did not because I wanted to be a philosopher. I did it because I wanted to explain to myself and understand myself what happened. I was reading books when he read the Tao Te King, and he read the Tao that can be named is not the real Tao. And he started reading philosophy, he started reading psychology. There were so many opposing views, apparently. And he had this drive of everybody has a piece of the truth. He famously said that there's no one human being intelligent enough to be 100% wrong all the time. So he wanted to look for the truth in everything, and he realized that people were talking about, and they were not opposing views, but they were talking about the same thing from different levels, and that's his great insight. So what is integral theory? It's a map of reality for the individual, the social, and the global. And it's a broad lens through which to view the issues facing us. So we have issues that are facing us in the world right now. Welcome. And we look at these issues, and we can look at these issues from a close perspective with only one lens, and we're going to start speaking about solutions that don't have many other issues into consideration. So that's the idea of integral theory. Now, what is the basic understanding of integral theory? Integral theory says that reality has an internal aspect and an external aspect. So, for example, a person, and let's talk about in communication, a person has an internal aspect. When a person says something, for example, if I say, it's raining outside, and you say, yes, when I say it's raining outside, I am lying, because it's not. But when you say yes, you're not, because you say it because you believe it's true. Now, if you look at there and you say yes, then you are. So there's an internal aspect of ourselves, which is truthfulness, and it's an external aspect, which is the truth, that you can look at that object or at that fact and verify that it's true. And there's many other things. What happens inside of me, no one can know except with my communication to the other. But what happens outside, we can see it by verifying facts. So there's an internal and external aspect to everything, even down to the atom. The atom has an internal energy. It has it's called prehension. Basically, an atom can sense that there are other atoms around because of the electric forces. So from the atom all the way to the molecule, to the cells, etc., there is an internal aspect of the organism or the entity, we're going to call it later on Holon, that has a series of characteristics, and it's only experienced by that specific Holon we're going to talk about. So there's an internal and external. Now there's another aspect, which is everything manifests in single and in plural. So there's one aspect of human beings, one aspect of dogs, one aspect of, and there's a collective. Okay? So when you combine all of those, you have 4 quadrants. So the internal of the singular is the I. This is I, my experience. The external of the singular is my body, my brain, my bones, everything that is external to me. The internal of the collective is the we, us, the culture. And the external of the collective is the society, the systems, the traffic system, the internet, the system of laws, etc. So in every occasion, everything that happens has those 4 aspects. So that's what the that's what the 4 quadrants come from. So the internal is the mindset, and the external is the behavior that that mindset manifests. The internal of the collective is the culture, and what the culture manifests is a system of laws, system of traffic, system of whatever. Okay? Now, let's go to some examples and understand. So in the upper left, is the interior of the individual. We have the language, and the language is the intention in that language. So in that quadrant, we can look at expressions of human beings as art, aesthetics, psychology, philosophy, spirituality. Now, human beings, when they are talking about external things, they produce the language, but then it's not the intention, but it's the operation of that language. And we're talking about science, science, physics, cosmology, chemistry, biology. Okay? Now, human beings collectively, in the interior, they produce a language which is cultural. You know? So there's all the expressions of the language, and then all the minute characteristics that it even can go to specific groups of people that speak in a specific way. And only those groups understand that type of thought. And then is the culture, philosophy, religion, morality, ethics. And finally, in the lower right, the stereo of the collective is the they language, the social systemic language, social sciences, sociology, economics, anthropology, etc. So here is when sometimes this science is saying something that might apparently contradict here. This fight doesn't exist anymore because they do not belong to the same quadrant. And that's the great insight that Ken has given us. Now let's see an example of what is what happens in these quadrants. This is what I want to mention. What happens in these quadrants is that they develop in a sequence that we're going to, in a hierarchical sequence or a holarchical sequence. We're going to see that. So for example, here we have in the upper right, upper right. So we're seeing from outside, we see that we have particles, atoms, molecules, cells, organisms, bodies, and these are individuals. And then we have social conglomerates of those, ecosystems and galaxies, and they all belong to the upper right quadrant. The study of those. So that's the example. Okay. This is another way to represent this is in the upper right quadrant, the I quadrant, self and consciousness. We have the instinctual in the individual, the magic understanding, the egocentric understanding. It's where they're coming from, what is happening inside the individual. They evolve, they develop. That's the other aspect, lines. They evolve. And that's where the concept of structures or stages begins to be introduced that David's going to talk about. But basically, they go to egocentric, mythic, achiever, sensitive. Basically, people go from egocentric, me and only me, to ethnocentric, me and my people, to world-centric, all the world, to cosmocentric, me, all the world, and all the elements, all the animals, all the water, the space, etc. So the consciousness evolves in that direction. In this quadrant, we go from organic states, limbic system, neocortex is the way our external manifestation of this consciousness has evolved. In order to be a sensitive self or achiever self, we need a brain that is more sophisticated than the brain of a reptile. And this evolution produced different cultures: archaic, mythic, power gods, mythic, rational, pluralistic, integral, colonic. And there are systems associated with that. We organize things as we progress, we associate things: survival, tribes, feudal empires, elderly nations, corporate states, value communities, integral common, holistic networks. So, 4 quadrants, 4 aspects. And in each quadrant, there is a tendency to be developed, a development. And that development is what is called the stages. Okay. Now, we're talking about everything, and we call that reality. And another big insight from Ken, the theory, is the idea is what has these quadrants? And we say, I have these quadrants because I have external, but in general, what has these quadrants? We are so used, and we're going to see this a little bit later, but we also used to say that everything is composed of atoms and molecules and cells, but that doesn't explain things like happiness, love, which is a reality too. They're not composed of atoms. So Ken said that reality is composed of holons. Holons are wholes that are part of other things, and we're going to see a little bit of example. So let's read this and then let's unpack this paragraph. A new perspective on whole-part relationships is taking shape around the concept of the whole, a term coined by Arthur Koestler to designate that which is simultaneously a whole in its own right and a part of a larger whole. An atom is a whole in itself. When it's also a part of a molecule, it becomes a holon, a whole part. The molecule that is also part of a cell is a holon, as is the cell that is a part of an organ, and so on. The hierarchy of relationship from the atom to the organism is known as a holarchy. The concept of holon and holarchy are fundamental to understanding the healthy function of complex living systems, which require that each of their whole parts maintains its own identity and boundaries, even as it functions as part of a large whole. That's a mouthful. So let's try to unpack this a little bit. So like I was saying, we have long been told that everything is made of atoms, subatomic pattern, but this leads to the concept of only physical things exist. If we say this is it, only physical things exist, if reality is composed of atoms, then such things as love, mind, spirit, if they are real, will be derived from physical things, and that's not the case. They do have an aspect, they do have a expression in the physical quadrant, which is the upper right, but they're not that. Okay? So this approach, the approach of everything is material, is quadrant reductionist. Most understanding of most people in the world, and what is promoted by TV and professors and everything, is that the world is a material world. And they have all these programs in TV and in the Science Channel and everything, trying to prove that in this part of the brain is where this is happening. So God is not true because something happens in this brain when they think about God. So that means the apple is not true. It doesn't exist because something happens in the brain when you see an apple too. But we need to have a more broader way to understand the world. So Wilder theory presents the approach of Holons to understand what reality is. So what are Holons? Holons are whole parts. First of all, Holons means that there is a hierarchy, and we're going to change the word hierarchy for holarchy later on to take away from the concept of oppressive hierarchies. The fact that the person in top can oppress the person below. We're not talking hierarchy that way. We're talking in hierarchy the way that the acorn precedes the oak. And when the oak exists, the acorn has to disappear and become part of the oak. It's a component inside. It changes to become. But that doesn't mean that the oak says, I don't want acorns, or I dominate the acorns. That's not the case. So this is the hierarchy. Plants, bodies, organs, tissues, cells, molecules of atoms, protons, neutrons, electrons, quarks, strings, something. Because now we are in the string theory, but who knows? They're already talking about another N theory, which is beyond that. But it will be a component of strings. Okay. So this is essential. Holons are nested, one inside another, which is inside yet another. And in this sense, it's more appropriate to use the term holarchy as opposed to hierarchy. So that's important. Okay? Now, Holons. Holons can be sentient. So what is, they're able to perceive or feel things. So whatever is sentient, this is the basic definition. They're able to perceive or feel things. And here, later on, we're going to start seeing how some of these holons that we don't consider sentient might in the future be sentient if artificial intelligence. Because if sentient is able to perceive or feel things, where do you draw the line? I mean, an atom is sentient? Well, an atom can perceive other atoms around. So we're not talking about being alive. We're talking about being sentient. That's important. Or non-sentient. Non-sentient is not able to perceive or feel things. Now, the sentient holons can be individual, and individuals are, for example, atoms, molecules, cells, bodies. And one of the characteristics of these holons is that they have a dominant monad. What is the concept of monad? The dominant monad is a center of decision, a center of volition of that holon. For example, if my hand wants to go to, my brain tells my hand to go to open that door, my feet have to go there. They cannot stay here because I have a dominant monad. But if a flock of geese is flying, which is also a holon, but it's a social holon, we'll also see that, and one goose goes to the right, not all of the geese are going to go to the right. So that social holon does not have a dominant monad. Is it clear? The individual holons have autonomy, wholeness, or agency. So they have this tendency to preserve themselves as an individual, as a whole. But also, they have relationships, partners. So they also have a tendency to maintain their partner. So for example, my cells, as I can take a cell as a specific cell. As a matter of fact, when you do a biopsy or something, they take a cell, specific cells, to see what happens with that specific cell. But that cell, which tries to be itself, it's also a part of my body. And that is the tendency of communion. They have also the tendency of self-dissolution. They start and they finish. and they have a tendency of self-transcendence, which is the tendency of becoming part of something larger. So those are the basic characteristics of the individual Holon. Now, the social Holon. The social Holon is, for example, is aggregations of members, not parts, members of the Holon. So, for example, here we are a Holon, which is called Integral 101 class. And this Integral 101 class is constitutive or integrated of the members, but we're not part of it. And that is determined by what is the senior Holon and the junior Holon. For example, in my body, I'm the senior Holon. And the junior Holon, which is integrated, which is a cell, I have complete dominion over it. I can take a part of my body, I can take a cell, they can take blood out of me, which is part of me, because I need that to happen for some reason, for some medical reason. So the blood doesn't have anything to say. But in this group, as members, the group itself cannot determine what each one of us does, because we are part of the group because we decided to be part of the group. But still we are a social Holon. Okay? They do not have a dominant monad. Each successive level of social Holon transcends and includes the previous level of social Holons. You know? So the family in a way transcends. The family in a way transcends and includes each one of its members. Social Holons do not transcend and include individual Holons, which are members, not parts of the social Holon. Okay? Is that distinction clear? No?
Are you saying that there are individuals who choose not to be part of the social Holon, or conversely, the social Holon can choose for them not to be part of?
No, it's not about choice.
Okay.
And an individual Holon, my cells are not members of my body. They're part of my body. I'm the junior Holon, the senior Holon of all my body.
Okay.
And I can do with any part of my body as I wish. I can take blood out. But as social Holon, society, for example,
Yeah.
transcend and include individual Holons, but they are members, not parts. That means that the social Holon, as the senior Holon society, cannot impose all its rules on the individual, because the individual has rights by itself. Yeah, that's the when we think of societies as a body, that idea that we can do whatever we want with parts of our body is translated into society in a wrong way, because society is an aggregation of members. It's not an entity in itself. And the members can have rights that are opposing or different from the society as a whole.
The majority of their parts or beliefs can be part of the society, that there can be maybe a minority that aren't.
No, they continue.
They
still are part. They
Okay.
still are part
Okay.
of the society.
Uh-huh.
But that doesn't mean that what applies to the whole is going to apply to the
Okay.
part.
Okay.
Because they're really not parts but members.
Okay.
Okay?
The monad of the society doesn't necessarily apply to the individual Holon. Is that correct?
The society doesn't have a monad. It has a monad, but it's not the dominant.
Right.
The society has a monad in the sense that it has rules, regulations, but it's not dominant because it can be exception. It's the whole discussion of morality and the levels of morality. You know, the famous thing of the person that the wife is dying and steals the drug, does it's right to steal the drug or not? Because what is more important? Some people will say, no, you have to obey the rules. Some people say, well, it depends. Some people say, I will do it because I want, and so what? So, okay? Is it clear? I mean, are we there?
I'm trying.
Now, non-sentient, not able to respond. We have what's called artifacts. So what are artifacts? Artifacts are those things produced by sentient holons. For example, anthills. An anthill is called an artifact. And we're going to see that we differentiate artifacts from those. Spider webs, automobiles. Those are called artifacts. And this is where the line of sentience is going to be blurred. And we're seeing that. That's what evolution is showing us new things. For now, our human body is the maximum expression of this line of evolution. It contains the maximum. But who knows? I mean, 5 million years ago, there were no human beings.
I'm sorry, I'm skipping to that third one, maybe I should.
Yeah, okay. So, first of all, what are artifacts? They are made by sentient holons. Okay? So an anthill, they reflect the level of consciousness of their creator. Huh? So the code of laws of the Romans is a sentient, is a social holon, it's a theory, it's a holon, that reflects the level of consciousness that they had at that point. Ours will be different, reflect a higher level of consciousness. And what happens there is, for example, an individual holon can have an idea at a very high level. This is the example that Ken puts in SES. It's Colt, the guy that invented the revolver, had a level of consciousness, let's say, David's going to explain that, so I'm going to use numbers for now. Had a level of consciousness 5. He invented the revolver. The industrial complex that made the revolver was a level 4, another level of consciousness. But a person at level 1, with no morality, can use the revolver. Because it was invented by a higher level. That's the case of the wars and all that stuff. People that invented the atomic bomb, they were not thinking of destroying Hiroshima, probably. They were in this, well, they were really trying to get a gun, but a big weapon. But that can happen. You can invent something because you're curious about it, but a person at a lower level can use it in a different way. And if we don't understand this distinction, then we cannot explain what this something happens. Well, things happen. Can you imagine Attila, the Hun, with access to the atomic bomb? This is what happens when the Prime Minister of England made the agreement with Hitler. You say, okay, we did it. And Hitler was, because he didn't have the morality to be bound by agreements. But when Gandhi stepped in front of the army, the reason that happened is because the English had a level of understanding and a level of morality that they couldn't react. But let Gandhi stand in front of the Colombian guerrillas. I want to see that. Lift the weapon out. You know, so that is important to understand. Now, there's the point that is controversial, and this is one of my favorites. And the artificial intelligence robots may eventually have their own form of consciousness. We don't know, but they will continue being artifacts because they were made by us. So that raises a lot of questions.
Can I do that one?
We can do 2 hours and 3 hours on that. Okay.
Okay. Their own form of consciousness would be programmed by their creators, correct? That would
Not necessarily. Not
You're saying
necessarily.
that consciousness can somehow.
Think about Hal in 2001.
No, but let me-
Okay, so that Hal just developed his own.
Okay, yes.
Yes.
Let me say,
How does consciousness develop?
this is a very quick thing we can someday do 201 on this, but this very simple. There are experiments right now of robots that can feel. How? There's this guy that started his life with a very curious, great curiosity about what is feelings. And he's been studying, he's a PhD, a very, very sophisticated guy. So he created robots, and he puts in front of them a blue vial and a red vial. And he has this electrozapper. And when the robot approaches the blue one, he goes into electrozapper, and all these things happen in the robot because it doesn't function. And then when he goes into the red one, he puts the zapper in a way that there's electricity in embedded flow. So the robot starts feeling that one makes him work well and the other makes not feel well. And with the time, the robot says, blue, bad, 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 red, good, 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 by itself.
By itself.
Because
no
it starts,
programming
it's called
whatsoever
heuristic,
besides
it's called heuristic programming.
Sorry.
Heuristic, how you say it?
Heuristic, yeah.
Heuristic
Heuristic.
programming.
H-E-U-R-I-S, yeah.
And there is, they learn. There's robots that have been programmed to evolve. You know, they just allow that. There's another experiment with robots that play football, not soccer. They play soccer. And what it is that there's 3 against 3, and they can communicate. So everyone knows where the other is, what is the intention of what they're going to do. That's all the rules they have. And they say, okay, you can make a goal, and they let it go. And they've been playing for, I think it's now 7 years, and they create strategies by themselves as they do it more and more and more and more.
Oh, where is
So those things are happening right now.
Where?
Right now. You can
where
go
is
to
this? Sorry, the robot's playing soccer.
soccer.
Where is that?
I think it's in England. But there is a program, there is a very interesting program in Science Channel. It's called Through the Wormhole with Morgan Freeman.
Right.
And you can see all this there, all these things there.
Okay.
So, okay. So the big question mark here. But the important thing is the artifacts are different from individual Holons. They're made by sentient Holons. And finally, we have heaps. And heaps are rock, puddles, dunes, happen without the intervention of sentient Holons. Okay? So reality is composed of Holons. We tend to call Holons only this green, and here's a holarchy, and here we call artifact, and hipparchy.
I don't really know the term.
Okay, so, but all of them have a kind of progression, a hierarchy. Okay? So, some considerations. Artifacts can be conceived by an individual Holon at level 5, I would say, produced by a social Holon at level 4, and used by an individual Holon at level 1. It's the example of the code that I gave before. Now, the other consideration is we need to understand that some of the sequence that we use to, in biology and even in sociology are sequences that are mixing Holons, and they can take scientists to wrong conclusions. Because if you start making a sequence and you may start making rules for that sequence, and all of a sudden you switch from individual Holons to social Holons, and you apply that to social Holons, some of the rules that you made from the individuals can, and you believe that they apply. So this is a great distinction. So for example, this is a mixing holarchy, human, family, society, nation, work. That's not a real sequence. Why? Because this is an individual Holon, but this is a social Holon. The fact that this family doesn't have a dominant monad is called Thanksgiving. What happens at Thanksgiving? What you want happens? No. That has a complete different behavior than what you will expect. That's the best way to understand. Serious consequences because the senior Holon has the power to impose its organization in a junior Holon, as in cell, organ, body. The body tells the organ what to do, that tells the cell what to do. Now, there's another part to this, which is, it goes the other way, is you can destroy the body without destroying the organs. And you can destroy the organs without destroying the cells.
You saying can or can't?
Can. You can. Yeah. You can shoot me and the body is destroyed, but all the organs are still there.
For a while.
Well, you can
They're dead.
take them out though and put them on life support, you know, like
Yeah, you
hard to
can
keep
put it in
moving,
life support, yeah. Or you can take the,
if you wanted to.
let me put it this way. We can destroy every single molecule in the universe. What would happen to the atoms? Nothing. That's how they start. It's called the Big Bang. It was just
That's a
atoms.
mind blower to me.
So that means that the senior has the power to impose organization, but the junior has the power to make existent or not, because if you destroy the organ, you destroy the body. If you destroy the cell, you destroy the organ and you destroy the body. And that's how you know what the holarchy is. You know what is senior and what is it's junior. Well, it is what is senior? The cell or the atom? You destroy the cell, the atom, but you destroy the atoms, there's no cell.
So the junior really is has the most power? Is that what you're saying? Out of
The junior has not the most power, has the most span. It's the
more okay.
span.
And it's more fundamental. The junior's more fundamental,
Okay.
the senior's more significant.
And the senior is more significant.
All right.
So the senior has more depth.
Got
So the more you do things with more depth, the less numbers there are of those depth holons. Which contradicts the idea that more is better. Usually less is more intelligent. Okay? Okay. Let's, just for information, a little bit of thinkers of the 4 quadrants. So, the left-hand paths are interpretive hermeneutics and consciousness. In this area, we have people like Freud, Jung, Piaget, Aurobindo, Plotinus, and the Buddha, Jesus, etc. These are people that were looking at the interior of the individual. So when we talk about the difference between Freud and Skinner, we're really not talking about the same thing. We're talking about apples and pears and apples. He was talking about the interior of the individual. He was talking about the behavior of the individual. So there was no contradiction. So in the right-hand paths, monological, empirical, positivist form, what is happening today, Skinner, Watson, Locke, and Pearson, what is happening today is that most people are living in a reductionistic, flatland world in which only this quadrant exists. Okay? In this, the collective is all the social scientists, Thomas Kuhn, Leptin, Nexer, Weber, etc. And in the right-hand panels is more, has been developed lately with the system theorists and Marx and Comte, all these philosophers and sociologists. So what Marx was saying, it applies to the systems of society, but because it was taken as a social, it was confused the social holon that has power over the individual. That's what communism is. And that distinction was not made, and that's why all this happened. Okay?
Does it ever talk about the shadow side of the right quadrant?
Yeah, remember these all quadrants, all
Because-
lines, all levels, all types, so we'll talk about that.
Because I know if I stay in that right-hand quadrant too long, it makes me sick. I
It's not about it to stay on.
I mean, I can do both real well, but I like to jump over to the left-hand side a lot. I mean, but our society has been on this reductionistic equation here of the right-hand path, which is a big problem
Mhm.
with with our social interaction with the significant
Correct,
others
correct.
and parties, etc.
And we're gonna go there in a minute. So this is the concept of the 4 quadrants and Holons. Now, what are the actual applications? Let's very quick. For example, if we think about how to make money, this is the way we can think. Okay, and then this, or the other way is make something, or if this quadrant is take care of us, or get a job. So this is a way to think about how to make money. Which car to buy? That's another thing. So the best, some people buy a car because it's the car that they feel the best. I like it. They buy it. Some people go and read every single report they can about it. Other people is, well, what is my neighborhood driving? It's a complete different. This is in this quadrant. And then other people that are like really, really heavy, and they go to finance and service, sales. Can I park this car? Taking into account all the systems. Yeah. So this is a way to see that we can think. People. This is what, in a way, salespeople knew, and they didn't tell us, and they use all these things to push our buttons. What's music? Music is being married to the news. For scientists, music is vibrations. For people, it's our voice. And for other people, it's just a business. Simon Cowell. Wine. What is wine? It's appreciation. It's grapes plus time. It's a celebration in the weak quadrant. Or it's a system of retailing. Okay, so we can do it in integral health also. So if we're going to consider health as an integral, how's my timing? I don't have.
You're right at
right there.
left,
I have one more. Okay. So integral health. I want to go. We're not in our health system. We're not treating the patient as we should, in part because we are not looking at the integral health. So there is one part is the individual. So in any health issue, the personal experience, the thoughts, the attitudes, and the beliefs, they count for the Holon in their health. Now, if you only stay here, you become a new ager and don't go to the doctors and it's part, or you said, oh, you have cancer, that's because your mother or your uncle or in past life, or which it can be an aspect, but it's not all the truth. It's an aspect. The other is the interpersonal. So the person that has a health program, what is the group that they belong to? What are they sharing or constraining experiences, thought, and attitudes? For example, for chronic fatigue syndrome, which is something that's very controversial. People with chronic fatigue syndrome are usually accused by the doctors of having mental problems. Oh, that's not a problem. And they ask them to do exercise, which is the worst thing that a person with chronic fatigue syndrome can do, because one of the biggest problems for them is how they process oxygen. And the whole thing is that they have to take time to recover it in order to. So if doctors don't take into account this part and what the support group is and how the people think about, then this quadrant will interfere a lot. Then is the exterior, and it's true. And there's all the science we have to study, bacteria, microbes, enzymes, DNA, all these things is true and it's part of it. But we used to believe in the 70s and the 80s that the DNA and the brain cells were there and nothing we can do. We now know that the brain has plasticity, and that wasn't true. And we know that DNA can be altered, not only with drugs, even with attitudes, sometimes the DNA. There's the studies that show that some people change the color of their iris just with conversation. So there's no more science the way we believe, because this interaction exists. But there is science, and it's very profound, and there's a lot of things. And then there is here. This is very important. Social institutions, government policies, economic systems, the insurance. The insurance it's a big part of the health system.
Well, and that all got into place because there wasn't enough preventive in those upper areas.
Correct.
Preventive treatment, and so people developed that conscious mindset of let's do something alternative, which was radical, but the money in the lower quadrant is made in the treatment. And the chronic fatigue syndrome, or I forgot what they call it, but it's really
CFS.
Yeah, it's overactive nerves. They have overactive nerves and they can't quiet that. And so extreme exercise is very dangerous for them. But same with fibromyalgia.
Fibromyalgia.
But the money is made. We are a society that's bases this cure on the treatment of the obesity, the treatment of the problem, and then where you got all these people breaking off from that with the insurance and all this, it became a big money-making business in the recovery process.
Think of like diabetes or obesity. One of the best cures is don't drink Coca-Cola. Because it's simple. But it's okay.
That's not fun.
Okay. So according to Ken Wilber, all quadrants of levels model, everything can be understood through four distinct perspectives. Wilber applies this model to managing his CFS. Wilber has chronic fatigue syndrome,
Yes.
and he applies this to him. Okay? It can be applied to management, integral management theory. So intentional, we have to look at the notion about people that are important in business. Hello? But this was discovered like in the 70s. Before, we just used people, and we never understood that they were not motivated just by money. It was a great discovery. You know? And here is behavioral. Just give them more money, put more light, do this, do that. Individual performance, that's part of it, but it's not. Yeah, as we know by Maslow knows that once we get to a certain level, money is not going to motivate anymore. Then cultural. Well, more and more, I prefer to work for a company producing air conditioning than a company producing bombs. You know? So there's this. And then systems theory. Obviously, we see in the world what is happening, and machines and robots and technologies replacing a lot of the things we do. We are like, oh, but this has been happening all along. I mean, which of you came here walking on a horse? We accept the car. It's just, it changed. The guy in the thing calling us changed one of the jobs that people had, which was to pull the car. And it's going to change everything we do, because now the new technology and the new systems is not only the extension of our hands and our body, they're becoming now the extension of our mind. There are thousands of articles that you guys write, that you guys read on the internet. You're going to be surprised by them, that are written by computers without human intervention, and you do not know the difference. Most of the reports on stocks and all of that, they're written by computers now, because it's a formula to write. Most of the technical manuals of most of the software, they're written by computers. Written not that somebody read. Every single word is assembled by a computer, the syntax of the sentence, and they shut it out. And they're getting better and better at that. So knowledge workers are going to start being replaced by computers also. But what happened?
None of us.
When we were, labor, we had to study to become knowledge workers. So we were not displaced. Now, we're going to get to we're going to become spiritual workers. That's my optimism. Okay, questions? Let's open this to discussion a little bit. But don't please everybody at the same time.
A couple of things come to my mind. One of them is emotional intelligence, and another one is Kohlberg's hierarchy, morality, etc. I mean, sorry, but the point of the whole integral theory is to take everything that's happening in the world for now and possibly the future, make some sense of it, right?
And give it its place, its proper place.
Give it its proper place,
Yeah.
okay.
And
So
its
that-
proper value.
Okay, okay. So that ostensibly when we leave here, we will have ourselves in the proper place, right?
Let me say something. When you go for the first time to an introduction of integral theory, you are bound to sleep different that night.
Really?
Things can.
Things will make sense?
Things can. Well, for me particularly,
Uh-huh.
reading my first book on Wilbur was like, yes. This is the way I think. Why didn't I write this? He's right. Of course, I don't have the genius in it, but it makes so much sense.
Yeah, okay.
People that say that Wilbur is very complex, probably is because they're not getting there, in a way. You have to have a really question. How is that you can read this here that says A and read this here that says the contrary, and this is written by a double, triple PhD, and this is written by a double, triple PhD. How can it? And then you say, oh no, he's talking about the first one, the lower right, and he's talking about the upper. Oh,
Okay.
now it makes
I see.
sense.
Okay.
That's the idea.
Okay, so we'll be able to put it into a quadrant and,
You'll be able
Okay,
to
this is-
make sense of
okay.
things more and more.
To contextualize it, yeah.
Contextually.
Yeah.
And there's another point too that I think integral helps from my perspective. It is not integral theory and using it and using it in your life when you look at things and so forth. It isn't a silver bullet to solve all your problems and conflicts and the world problems and so forth that you're going to run across. You're still going to have the irate aunt that's in the family and so on. So, but for me, applying and using and understanding somewhat integral theory is just a way to handle
Okay.
reality however it comes at me.
Yeah.
Whether it's bad stuff or good stuff or confusing stuff or whatever. It's not the bullet to solve the
No,
problem.
not to solve,
it's just
but
a
to
way to
understand.
kind of handle the
Better
problem.
Okay.
The
better
understanding.
understand.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
yeah. You can see, for example, we go into a country, or any country go into a country, and you start try to establish democracy. Well, you cannot establish democracy if the country has not gone to the face of tribes, because there's a sequence. Participatory democracy needs that you have always stepped through some stages. This is what David is going to explain. So let's go, we'll see a little bit more of that. So now let's talk about lines of development. The person, the individual Holon, and this is in the ups, and this is in the upper right. The individual Holon in the upper, the upper left. The individual Holon in the upper left, interior, is not just one thing. We have what are called lines of development, and the better way to understand that is different intelligence. Remember that they were discovered that kids cannot be all of them put in the same place, because the IQ measures only one part of who you are. So if you have a lower IQ, you might be Picasso. You have a very high art IQ and no interest on mathematics. I know that Mozart could have been a PhD in physics if he wanted, he has that brain, but he was not interested in that. And if we try to put Mozart into our educational system, we will destroy one of the geniuses of humanity. Thank God there was not an educational system at the point that he came. How many Mozarts are we destroying? So, lines of development. Each one of us has different lines of development. There's most of them, there are more, but I listed here aesthetic. We talk about cognitive, the capacity to take perspectives and understand things from different points of view. Emotional intelligence, which is the problem with the ant in the meeting. If we understand what is it, we can see, well, she maybe has a lower emotional intelligence. Shadow, we talk about that, which is that part of our interiority that we are not aware of, but that doesn't mean that it's not affected. So I turn around and I have this big black thing here, and I continue talking. I don't know that there's stain in my shirt. I'm completely unaware, but I'm sure that people will get distracted because of that. So there's a shadow element, and there's a line of development there. Interpersonal, how I relate to other people. Kinesthetic, you know, when you see Michael Jordan, you see God playing basketball. Moral. So then there's and it can be a problem because you can have a lower moral development and high cognitive development.
That's your Kohlberg, Carol.
Exactly. That's the Nazi doctor, scientist. Very intelligent, but let's dissect these people alive, see how they react. Musical. So there's people like me that are like in zero at this place. I don't even start. And there's Beethoven, which is a god. The needs, and Maslow talked about this, the psychosexual development, spiritual development. There's a line of spiritual development, ethics, ego development. Ego is the way of being, your overall way of being, and relationships, which is interpersonal. But the idea here is that we have different lines of development, and the average mode of these lines of development, you can be more high, lower. It's called a psychogram. The psychogram will show you where you are in each one. And the idea of integral theory is that once you understand that you have different lines, you make an assessment and say, okay, we'll see that at the end, what an integral life practice is. Individual development stages. So we are going, this is what this afternoon, we're going to spend 2 hours in stages. So seeing in the day, but basically researchers have documented continued cognitive, moral, etc. growth in the upper left quadrant. So all these lines will develop in stages. And like I said, I'm not going to talk about this because this afternoon we're going to go in detail on that. And there's a useful personal growth map for ourselves and source of compassion and appreciation for others. When we understand that, the example of the ant, when we understand that, like he says, not a silver bullet, the ant is not going to change, but we're going to understand why that is happening. And more important than that, if we are at a higher state of development, we're going to see that those stages are necessary. People have to grow through, so we're going to grow in care and compassion for those situations. Because sometimes the ant response is predicated in the way we're responding to it. And if we start being like more soft, we're going to find out that probably it wasn't that bad. Okay?
To me, lines helps explain a lot about what we see in politicians and CEOs and the like, that behavior, a very high level of development in interpersonal and cognitive and so on, but very low level line of perhaps spirituality or morality, or you didn't list it, but the ecology, the environment, and environmental, the corporation that's destroying the world through the environment,
Yeah,
and yet he's
that's,
a very high level individual in personality.
Yeah. Well, here's one line that I missed that is super important, is the values line.
Yeah,
You're right.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have to put that in this slide, because the values line is fundamental. That's the whole thing of spiral dynamics. Okay. The individual development stages. The stages are marked by increasing freedom, increasing the number of perspectives that a human can take. So first-person people are narcissistic. They have a greater perspective. They can consider other people. They have a second person. They go to ethnocentric. They increase their perspective. They have a third person. They can be world-centric. And a fourth person is a cosmocentric. That's a meta perspective on the other perspective. This is very important. This is what is called second tier. Second tier thinking is when you can start taking meta perspectives, meaning that you can take the perspective of the narcissistic, of the ethnocentric, and the world-centric at the same time and understand. Because you are now transcending, but you know how to be narcissistic, and you take the parts of the narcissistic that are important, which is basically security, survival. Then you take the part of the ethnocentric, which created love and affiliation and familiarity, and then you take the part of the world-centric, which is the ecological part and everything, and now you are a meta perspective. Everything counts. So that's the four. So this is a very quick thing. Like I said, Deb is going to go in detail on this. And at each stage, what happens is there is an increasing consciousness. There is an increasing care. This person has more consciousness than this, less conscious than this person. But the person, the second person, has more care than the egoistic person, but less care than the world-centric person. So this is an increasing consciousness, an increasing care, and increasing a capacity for love. Capacity for love. Because you can take more elements into account. Love, Eric Fromm, remember? Beautiful book. He talks about knowing, he talks about respect, and he talks about care, which are the elements of love. To love someone, you need to know that person. To love someone, you need to care for that person. To love someone, you need to respect that person. And you need to care for that person. After the other. So this capacity for love, as you increase in stages, these things increase in your life. Okay? Now, again, very quickly, different stages of development. So there's the cognitive line, it's Piaget and Aurobindo. They develop all the elements of that cognitive line. Graves, spiral dynamic, the line of values. Keegan, orders of consciousness. Lavinger and Kurt-Reuter, the self-identity. Gebser, archaic, magic, mythic, rational, pluralistic, integral. Fowler, stages of faith. Now, the reason I wanted to have this here, because this is going into other things different from what we're going to see in this argument, is these researchers developed this independently. But all of them found that everything grows in stages. That's the holarchy. Life and evolution is a progression of stages to more complexity, more consciousness, more independence, more care, more love. That's the trajectory that we see in everything. And it's very significant that no matter what researchers are doing in different areas, they found the same sequence. And they always find that there is a point in which there is a jump. Like, for example, in Aurobindo said that there was this visual logic. When you start having visual logic, that there was like a new world of understanding opens. Keegan, I think it says that it is a momentous leap. It was Keegan or?
That's clear, that's Beck.
Beck. Anyway, a momentous leap on understanding when you go from green to yellow. It's like green, a level of green understanding, people, they tend to not move ahead because everything is the same, and we have to consider them. We're sitting in the fire, and the wolves are attacking us, and we're sitting there saying, "Well, these wolves shouldn't be attacking us. You know, they're not considerate with us." Yeah,
Oh,
that's
there's a
all
lot,
right.
there's a lot written on
They're gonna
change.
eat, huh?
There's a lot written on change theory as it impacts each stage, and the resistance to it,
Now,
or the embracing of it.
yeah, we're going to talk about it. The yellow people will say, okay, they shouldn't be attacking us, but let's protect ourselves. You know, make more fire or something. Okay. So let's go to that. There's a, this is also a chart displaying stages. We're going to see it.
I'm not gonna read that, am I?
Yeah. This is spiral dynamics, and this is
Okay.
attitude. So just different lines. But again, every time we see a chart of development, we see the same sequence of growth. And also the same sequence of transcend and include. Because each level has the other level inside. The spiral dynamics. Now, let's go to the next part of it. So we saw quadrants, stages, lines, and now let's talk about types. All these elements, all these holons, and let's talk about the individual holon, let's talk about the human being, presents itself, and they can be at the same level of development. It can be green, or it can be a level 1, level 2, level 3. For now, we'll see what. Let's say a level 4. But at level 4, they are presented in types, and the most basic of the types is the gender. And the gender has masculine and feminine, and we're not talking about the human body, you know, the feminine and masculine body, man or woman. We're talking about there is a characteristic of the feminine and a characteristic of the masculine, and a woman without some masculine will have problems, and a man without some feminine will have problems. So we have that is a type. And when you speak something, a woman speaks a feminine, because it can be a homosexual couple, and the feminine part of the homosexual couple speaks something, and the masculine part just gives a solution immediately. They will say, no, I don't want you to give me a solution, I want you to listen to me. That's the feminine part. The masculine part is action, action, action. So there's types, and can be the same. There's one distinction. Another distinction, another type, a typology, which is very famous, especially in business, is the Myers-Briggs, which is basically about possible, personal, logical, and present. And what is your typology here? I don't know all about Myers-Briggs. And then there is the famous Enneagram. So what I want to say about typology is that through the evolution of human beings, we have come to understand that there are people that react. Everything can be the same, and they can be the same stage of development, but they will react different. Why? Well, because they have a typology that is different. And that has to be taken into account if we want to understand reality. You know? Oh, this is because we cannot think, people that study the Enneagram, they get to a point that everything is you're an 8, you're a 9, you're a 7, you're a 5. It's not that extreme, but it's part of the thing. You know, everything counts. Are we clear on typology? And of course, we can go deep into any of these typologies. There's a lot of courses on the Enneagram and Myers-Briggs and other things. Another typology that they don't put here, and And some of these typologies have more scientific background than others, but astrology, you're a Leo, you're a Libra, that's another typology. Not, I don't think there's a lot of scientific evidence for that type of typology, but it's used. But this one, Enneagram, I've been very impressed by what can be predicted. And in the Enneagram, one of the things that the Enneagram has that is, that I think is important, is that the Enneagram was originated more of a way to understand why the soul, was when they start thinking of where the spirit gets confused. So we are one spirit. We're one with the spirit. And as we come into the manifest world, we get lost. We feel, sense ourselves as separate. But there's three ways we can do that. One is we can sense as separate as mind, and that's the types that think all the time. Or we can sense as separate as emotion, and those are the people that are, everything is emotion in their life. Or we can get lost as our sense of identity. So the Enneagram in this area is the sense of identity. These are the brainy people, and these are the emotional people. Yeah? So so that makes a lot of sense, because that's very real. And you can observe in the little kids around 8, 9, 10 months that some of them become very brainy, others are very sensitive. It doesn't matter if it's man or woman, it can be either. And others have this attitude of who am I type of thing, So that's any contribution of this little type. Okay. Any questions here? Now, let's.
Carolyn has one.
Okay.
Oh, I always have one, sorry.
It's okay. No, that's why this slide is here.
Okay. I've taken the Myers-Briggs test, and my problem with it was that they really wanted you to edge into one quadrant or one square or whatever. And I could see possibilities and whatever, the gray areas for lots of them, and so I didn't really fall into the square I thought I really would be falling into, and I was like in 3 squares. I'm wondering if someone, I mean, this is a little bit, maybe this is narcissistic, but maybe because I've studied so much of this stuff or can see the possibilities of so much of this, could I be going all over the charts with different characteristics and different likes and dislikes and different, tendencies and whatever?
Yeah, that is a very interesting question, and what I've noticed is that types get blurred in the soul as you go up in the scale.
Types get
blurred.
Oh, blurred, yes, thank you.
And the soul,
yes,
as you go up in the scale.
Yeah. Okay.
So, for example, an 8 in the Enneagram, which is me, has a tendency to become a 2.
Yeah.
It softens.
Okay.
But that happens in people that are very developed. It's very difficult to put them in one type because they start becoming more care, more compassion, more open, So they start becoming part of everything.
Okay.
But if you take a person on a lower development, they can be an authoritarian, and this is like this, and the church, and blah, 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 and you can just put them very straightforward in one thing. It's a masculine type 8, and they're like a champion. And that's clear. And they say, yes, that's what I am. And that's the best way to be. And I don't understand how people are different.
Okay.
Yeah, I got something I can add to that. According to my understanding of the integral model, it also doesn't make a hard distinction of the content and the quality of the items in the model. So, for example, it doesn't make an ultimate decision about whether or not the Myers-Briggs or the Enneagram or any other type is right or wrong. It could be totally wrong, but it's still going to be included in the map because the content is really not a judgment, you know. So ultimately, the integral, as far as I understand, won't make a determination on whether one is right, one is wrong, or the main thing is that it's placed in there if it exists.
Okay.
Exactly.
It's
So-
not as judgmental.
It's not at all judgmental. Unless it's demonstrably false. But even that would be still included, even if it's demonstrably false. If it exists, it's on the map. So
I see.
that's
And
kind of my
This is
understanding.
not supposed to be judgmental anyway. I mean, MBATI or Enneagram, if you're judgmental about it, it's because you don't understand what
Right.
it is.
Exactly.
Because it's not about there's a good, bad, right, wrong. I've
It's
done
not
lots of
good,
team
bad.
building over the years with that, and the greatest joy is for someone to recognize the value of difference.
Mhm.
And that's how teams become exceptional together.
Right.
So, the only thing I agree with you on that is that as I've taken them over the years, there's been slight movements because
Slight
of
movement.
that. So I am in a fuzzy area, whereas I wasn't a long time ago. So,
And
and
then
fuzzy
again-
doesn't mean it's fuzzy like I'm all over the map. I'm not. But there is more breadth
Okay.
because of it. A few questions different makes a little difference in how it comes out, and that does kind of disturb the MBTI people because they say you never change, but I don't agree with that. So,
Yeah.
that.
Exactly. There's three things. One is as we grow, we have more breadth. So obviously we change.
Yes,
That's the other beautiful thing about integral theory.
I'll never be an S.
There is a sequence of growth, and the bad news is we might not be up in that sequence. The good news is because there is a sequence we can grow. That's the thing. And what you were saying about everything that's included in integral theory, even if it's completely wrong, the thing is, remember, Ken says, I want to meet the guy that is so intelligent that makes something completely wrong.
Yeah,
Right,
That's-
okay.
Everything has a little bit of truth.
right.
That's
Yeah,
the idea.
that's a great statement.
Okay, let's talk about states to finish. So what are the states? So we say stages and states. Stages are vertical, is growth. States is development in a horizontal way. Okay. So what are the basic states are waking, dreaming, deep sleep, witness, and non-dual. So let's start. Waking. Everybody has a waking state. Even a child, a low, starting life, waking, it dreams, and it has deep sleep. Maybe they don't have access to the witness, to the witness state, and we're going to talk about what the witness and the non-dual state. So states are temporary by nature. We won't be always waking. We won't be always dreaming or sleeping. Those are things that happen. Now, those states have also states inside. They can be developed from experiences or peak experiences into permanent traits. Now, Ken talks about peak experiences, P-E-A-K, and he says peak experiences, P-E-E-K, which is you have a peak into some of these experiences, and we're going to talk about what they are. So states are their own levels. They're available at any stage, and they will be interpreted through the stage we are, and they're temporary except for realized beings. Now, we have a sequence of development from archaic, magic, mythic, rational, pluralistic, integral, and super integral. And we have these states: gross, subtle, casual, and non-dual. So, if a person has, an archaic person has a gross experience here, or it comes all the way here and has a non-dual experience, this is what is called natural mysticism. This is what the shamans have. They have an experience of being one, you know, at this level. So each person, depending on the experience they have, they will interpret that experience. They will interpret that experience with the level of understanding that they have. So, for example, and this is I found this is the best way to understand this. It's the famous out-of-body experience that people have near-death experience. Okay, when people are near their experience and they see the light, they see Jesus. But if you go to the Middle East, they see Mahoma. And if you go to India, they see Krishna. And if you go to China, they see Lao Tzu. They don't see either or. They just see a light. They interpret that according to the culture. Is that so? So you can have the same experience, and depending how you are developed, or what type of experience you have, you will interpret in a different way. When you have experience of mysticism at a cross, you have nature mysticism. It's people that say they are the one with nature. Or you can have a subtle experience, and they are one with all the ascended masters and the knowledge and the wisdom of the universe. Or you can have it at a causal, and then you have like luminosity or flashes of light or the great void. Or you can have a non-dual experience in which you know that everything is you, everything is the manifest and the unmanifest world, everything is one, and there's no difference. But that depends where you are in your development. When you have a very profound experience, and you are, for example, at the mythic level, what happens with the imams in the Middle East, these people, or the Zen masters in Japan during World War II, these people really have profound mystic experience. But the way they interpret, the culture they interpret, is that I went last night to my meditation and I had this experience. Mahoma told me, or this told me, that we have to kill all the infidels. Because I think that I have to kill them, and I have these experiences, so that's true. But it's just because we interpret it. That's what is so important to understand, that it's a vertical development and a horizontal development. And the horizontal development happens in states. Okay? Now, this is a little old Wilbur, and I have moved from this explanation, but it's still good. This is in integral psychology. And it's important to understand for the understanding of states. So, for example, there is the inside and the outside. So, at the personal level is the identity that the human has as it starts developing. It starts creating a sense of being a persona. It comes from the word in Greek. Persona means a mask. You put an identity on yourself. At the personal level, as you go into a deeper state, at the personal level, the sample counseling and the supportive therapy is what is needed at this level. For the way you identify and the things that you have in the shadow that you have not identified and integrated into your persona. So this type of therapy will work at this level. If you move to the ego level, you're more sophisticated. Because the ego, it's an addition to the identity that starts having characteristics, specific characteristics. You know, you say this person is this way, this other way, this other way. Most children are the same to a certain age. It's very difficult to, of course you can distinguish, but they have basically the same thing. Most children will speak loud in a public place, and no one will say why they're speaking loud. It's normal. Everybody knows that that's what's happening. They play. Okay. At the ego level, then psychoanalysis, psychodrama, transactional analysis, reality therapy, ego psychology will help with anything that is happening at this level, and we have to integrate the body into that. That is the outside of the expression of the ego level. At the next level, which is the centauric organism, the total organism, meaning you are integrating your body with the way you feel, the way you are in the interior. That's what is called a centaur. Then bioenergetic analysis, Rogerian therapy, Carl Rogers, the Gestalt therapy, existential analysis, logotherapy, and humanistic psychology. Logotherapy was designed by Frankl, that was in the concentration camp on becoming a person is Carl Rogers. Frankl is
Logotherapy.
logotherapy. What was the name of the book?
Man's Search for Meaning.
Man's Search for Meaning. That takes into analysis a more complete human being, total organism, and they understand the environment influence what is happening. This type of therapists do that. And then there's the young analytical psychology, the psychosynthesis, Maddow and Prigoff, and these are the transpersonal bands. Here is what all the movement that is now in psychology and psychotherapy of mindfulness. They accept meditation all day. We in the Western society, all we have to do is change the name and then we accept things. For 5,000 years in meditation, we call it mindfulness and now we accept it. We put things, we start measuring and say, oh yeah, this works. Well, it's been working for 5,000 years. But okay. And then you get to the higher, which is the non-duality consciousness. So here are the esoteric Islam, the esoteric Christianity, esoteric Judaism, Taoism, Vedanta Hinduism, Mahayana, and Vajrayana Buddhism. These are the practices. You see that these practices are psychotechnologies to growth in states. Not stages, to grow in states. Now, one relationship that has been found is that all these technologies, namely meditation, accelerate the movement in this direction. So it has been found that people that meditate can move to the next level quicker than people that don't meditate. Basically because they're doing introspection. Okay. Now, spirituality as a line, this is the line with the states. Wilber initially thought that transpersonal experience indicate higher stage growth. But then, and this was several years ago, he started to talk to a lot of spiritual teachers, one of which was Genpo Roshi from mine, and he asked Genpo Roshi, your teachers in Japan, at what level are? And he said, most of them are red or blue. And he was like, wow. How can they have this big experience? And then he realized that stages and states were different. This is an amazing contribution that Wilber made to the understanding of the world. Before Wilber, nobody understood this. This is one of the things, among others, but this is, nobody can say that was the first. He was the one that did it. And he revised it in Wilber 4. He knows that states are temporary. There's a spiritual line of development in which the states can become permanent structures. So you can come by the practices of meditation to you learn meditation. Basically, there's 5 steps. Basically, you need to learn to relax. That's one prerequisite, and you need to develop your concentration. Then the next thing you need to develop is an attitude of imperturbability, which is accepting things as they are. The next thing you have to develop is that you have to do meditation, not sleepitation. So you have to be alert. Okay? And the next thing is awareness. Which is different from alertness. Alertness is be present, and awareness is the wisdom of it. And once you know those things, once you are able to be in that state, then you do what Ramana said, which is inquiry. Who am I? And really go inside of yourself and discover for yourself who you are until you get to the point in which you are discover the non-duality, which is the higher state, that you realize that you is only one, there's only one I, and everything is the same. But this is not what you say. You have to realize that. And that is by the practice of meditation, spiritual technologies. Now, the other thing that is important to understand is that each state has a body. And that body can be developed. So the more you meditate, the more you go into the state of non-duality, the more you go into the state of casual, your light body. So the waking state has the gross body, the dreaming state has the subtle body. And this is where a lot of people get confused spirituality with the subtle body, and they get into all these experiences which are real, ascended masters and all the telekinesis and all those things, which is real. But that's the subtle body, that's not the spiritual body. And there's a lot of confusion in that. But it's real. And then there's the causal body, which is this sleep. And here is where non-duality starts. Non-duality is the body that encloses the whole thing. Now, how the states are developed from gross to subtle, the subtle to causal, then are developed to Troya. Troya, and as you develop these, what happens is you go from the purification to illumination to the dark night. The dark night, when you are, what is the dark night? When you become the witness of your own self, you start seeing all the stupid things you do. That's a dark night.
Scary stuff.
You start really realizing that you are the one causing everything in your life. That's a big dark night, I can tell you. And that night can be at a different level. So once you go through that and you establish yourself in the causal realm and you become really a witness, you can live in a way that you are the witness of what's happening. So I'm here and I'm the witness of the mountain. I'm here. I know that I am not my body, and I'm seeing the mountain. This is the example that Ken gives. All of a sudden, you realize there is no mountain, there is no me. We're one and the same, and that's the non-duality, the unification. So that's what the states, what the developmental states are. And that's the path of meditation, or the path of contemplation, or the path of prayer in the Christian tradition, or the path of whirling dancing on. All of those technologies work. That's part of integral. It's not just one, all of them work. Now, do you talk about the pre-transference?
May a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. So, this kid, the pre-trans-father is based on the simple idea, very important to understand. The idea that trans-ego states of mind, so-called spiritual state, can be confused with pre-ego state, childlike states, resulting in an erroneous view about spirituality and issues related to responsibility. So, these two guys are not having the same experience. This is a very beautiful kid that is probably asleep and is very comfortable with his chest ate and has nothing here. So it's very comfortable. But this guy is really deep into meditation. This is what Crane called the transparency. We can talk a lot about this. I guess you're going to talk a little bit more. But that's another big distinction. This is another big distinction that can make for the world. Hey guys, don't think that this is the same as this, because this guy has to grow a lot with this. Wait until he's 21. He's not going to be in this state. Unless he follows that. This is the whole map. Okay. Let's go very much. So, now that we understand integral theory, what is the whole thing? Well, we have to do a practice. So what is the practice? The practice is, the integral life practice, it requires at least core modules. You have to develop your body. What that means, eating well, drinking water, do some kinds of exercises, etc. Now, integral life practice, there's an effort that the integral theorists are doing, and what they're doing is everything, every practice has as a part of truth, but there are some that are more truth than others. So the idea is to try to see what practices are better than others. For example, one of the things that has been discovered is that weightlifting is the best thing you can do for yourself. It's better than running and aerobics and everything, because that goes directly into increasing your body mass, which increases metabolism, which makes you younger. So weightlifting is a great thing for running and all of that, the weightlifting. So this is the idea. Then the other practice that you are suggested to do is a mind practice, which is developing your cognitive line. The cognitive line has been found to be a component that is necessary but not sufficient. So the flour is necessary to make the cake. You cannot make cake without the flour, any kind of flour, but it's not sufficient. You need all the components. Well, the mind line, developing your mind, taking more perspectives, having more information, everything that is included in the cognitive line of the mind is another practice that you need to do. The spirit, you need to do some kind of spirit practice, meditation, whatever. Then you have to do some shadow practice. You cannot grow if you don't know what is happening behind you that is driving some of you. So these are the core practice that you have to, at minimum, you have to have some body practice, some mind practice, some spiritual practice, and some shadow practice. As a minimum to grow, you need to do this. Now you can add ethics, sex, work, emotions, and relationships. These are auxiliary practice. It's important. So you have, and the whole thing of integral life practice is that you have to develop your body, your mind, your shadow, your spirit. So what are the ways to grow? Meditation, definitely. And by meditation, we include all this mindfulness, prayer, contemplation, silence, all this stuff. Perspective taking. For example, a good exercise is watch a movie or watch something about global warming, and then look for someone that has a contrary opinion on that and watch it and see what happens inside of you. Don't you take different perspectives on things. So that will give an exercise. That's a practice. Support and challenge. What is that? It's called family. It's called relationship. Intellectual study for context, cognitive line is necessary but not sufficient. Those are the ones. Okay, so this is, unless you have any question, this is a brief overview of Integral Theory 101. We're going to take a break of 1 hour. We're going to have something to eat. And this afternoon, we're going to have a deep dive into structure stages, which is very important. So, questions?
This was excellent.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I should have brought a bigger notebook.